Hello and welcome to Two Therapists and a Microphone. I am Dr. Harrison Davis.
And I'm Dr. Aisha Dickerson.
Two Therapists and a Microphone is a podcast show about mental health, relationships, and social issues that personally affect you. We broadcast live every Thursday evening at 7 o'clock p.m. on the Our Black Media Network.
Harrison and I are two licensed psychotherapists with decades of clinical experience, and we want to hear from you. We want to hear about the situations or dilemmas that you're going through. So send us your questions, please, by visiting www.twotherapist.com and click on Ask Two Therapists at the top of the page. So actually, tonight, our topic is a topic that was asked to us. Someone wanted us to talk about this tonight, and we always oblige. We will answer your questions, and we will bring on other experts to talk about things that we're maybe not as experienced in.
Absolutely. So today's topic, but Dr. Aisha, you don't want to introduce this topic about we know someone
We do.
who recently lost his father. My condolences out to Robert Bryant, and he has been taking care of his mom and his dad. I think for about 2 or 3 years now. I know before the pandemic, and he's had to get a nurse. For I hope I'm not putting his business out there. I'm sorry, Robert, but I can also relate as I'm taking care of my dad. He doesn't live with me, but he has multiple health issues and he has to go to dialysis 3 times a week. And I have two sisters here in Atlanta, and we sort of split our time between them. He's had surgeries. And so we have to deal with that. And so that's a topic that I think a lot of adults are having to confront right now with our aging parents. So
Right.
you actually brought this topic up, Dr. Aisha.
Well, I mean, I brought it up after Robert gave it to us, but
Yeah.
I have had a lot of other people, or I've heard a lot of other people who have similar issues because maybe it's our age, Harrison. The older we get, the older our friends and
Yeah.
our
But I'm
colleague
older than
friends,
you.
parents. Right, right. But so by we, I meant you. The older you get, the older y'all's parents are getting. And although I am not a caretaker for my parents, it's something I worry about. Actually, a friend of mine and I were talking about as our parents get older and we see them start shuffling a little bit, we see them moving slower. Do we hire people to cut their grass? We
Mhm.
have things replaced in their homes just because of fear of what might happen as they get older. So today I call today's topic care for the caretakers because we're at that by we, I mean you, Harrison. You all are at that age
Mhm.
where you're taking care of your parents, and then also usually you still maybe have some kids that you're taking
Yep.
care of. They could be young kids, they can be adult kids, but you're
Yep.
right there in the middle
Yep.
taking care of everyone else. So it kind of becomes like your almost number one, number two, if not number one role.
Or
Yeah.
number three
Or number
sometimes
three.
if
Well,
you
I mean,
have.
it's definitely in the top five.
Yep.
It's a lot to do. So I'm very grateful that I am not there yet, and I hope I don't have to be, but I am also hopeful that I'm going to learn a lot tonight that will prepare me in the event that I am. So let's introduce our guest. The first one that I'm going to introduce is Betty Johnson. Betty is a clinical mental health counselor who's had the great opportunity to work with diverse populations, including couples, individuals, SPMI, geriatric, and addiction. So people who have those issues. She's known most of her adult life that she wanted to work in helping professions and often did so in a volunteer capacity through employment. Before entering the counseling field, Betty spent 20 years in the affordable housing industry working with seniors and family, providing life coaching to residents as they traverse community resources to help improve their way of life. From 2015 to 2021, she experienced one of the most significant forms of the helping profession, in that she had the opportunity to be a caregiver for her own mother who had dementia until her passing. In doing so, she got firsthand experience in learning self care while being a caregiver. Welcome, Betty.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And I want to introduce Miss Tanya Simmons Lee. She's a presenter, trainer, supporter of health and well being. She served in public and higher education for over 25 years, including education. She was also an assistant principal at a middle school in Houston County for 12 years. God bless you. In this position, she served as the career technical and agricultural education supervisor and the STEM coordinator. Before her tenure in the field of education, she held a career in mental health services for 10 years, where she served as a therapist and supervisor. She is currently the executive director of counseling services for Central Georgia Technical College. In this role, she oversees the area of direct and indirect counseling and plans awareness, prevention, and intervention opportunities for students who may be stuck, challenged, or overwhelmed with life. Before arriving at CGTC full time, she was an adjunct psychology instructor for 15 years on the Macon campus. Ms. Lee received her Bachelor of Arts and Master's of Science degrees from Fort Valley State University. Furthermore, she received her education specialist degree in leadership from Troy University and a PhD from the University of Georgia. She's a life coach and a professional counselor, national certified counselor, certified counselor supervisor, mental health instructor, school counselor, and a certified instructional leader.
You do all of that?
You do a lot. Got me tongue-tied, but I wanted to get your credentials out there. Welcome, Tanya Simmons Lee.
Thank you. Yeah, that's been my trek.
So I want to just jump right in with the questions. Again, I haven't had to be a caretaker, but when I think about this, the first thing that I think about is my great grandmother. My aunt was her caretaker. She had some others before. My aunt was the last one who was her caretaker before she passed away. But what I remember is things like her setting things on fire, pulling knives out on people. I remember visiting and this is my great aunt's house, and her being strapped to the wheelchair, which that could be considered elder abuse, I thought. But when I asked what happened, they said she was trying to stab us with a butcher knife. Like, what were we supposed to do? She's frail enough for us to move around like a child, and we're strapping her down for her safety and our safety. And my mind immediately went to, what could we have done to not get in this position? I know that for my great grandmother, she stayed at home throughout her adult life, so she didn't have retirement funds. I guess maybe she had a little Social Security or something, but luckily she had enough kids. People used to have a lot of kids back in the day to take care of her. So I want to start by asking, what can we do to be proactive? I'm thinking about when I get older, because I only have 2 kids. And if they both dislike me by the time I get old, like, what am I supposed to do? Okay. So let's start with you, Betty. What can I do to be proactive?
Probably just getting them prepared, I would say, because I started getting prepared to take care of my mom a little earlier on, because we were watching her decline from another state. So just kind of getting prepared, watching that, like, okay, so now my kids are aware, like, this is what it looks like when we get old. So please don't put me in a home. Take care of me. So doing that, but also, I'll be honest, just making sure that you're financially secure. So having some of that, make sure you have retirement and get into positions that give you some pension and kind of prepare for that.
That stuff is expensive, though, right? These retirement homes.
Yes, they are.
Like thousands of dollars.
Like 3 or 4 per month.
Oh,
yeah. It's
that's the going rate in Atlanta.
Go ahead.
No, I'm saying, so this something you looked into, Harrison? The going rate?
I did. My sisters and I are actually looking into assisted living. And there are different levels, and I think we're going to get to that real soon. But first, I want to hear from Tanya to answer the question about how can, if we're not at that point, I'm already there with my dad, but if you're not there, how can you prepare to take on that responsibility?
I think it's all that Betty said, plus the fact that, as you age, your parents are doing the same thing. So coming into some self-awareness about where you are will help you to understand where your parents are. At least that's what worked for me when my father was the first person who we had to provide some caregiving for. His came not necessarily due to old age, but he had a heart attack, he had a stroke. I mean, he had several things that happened that kind of got us to that place. And when it came to finding somewhere for him to be, it was about, luckily he had worked somewhere that had some pretty good pension. His Social Security was at a place to where it worked well for him as well. And then there still need to be a little buffering in place to provide it. And then making sure that you're checking in with those care centers was a task, making sure that they don't just get there. That became a hassle about, okay, who's checking, this week kind of thing, putting people on schedules. And it's hard, but I think the first thing is being aware of where you are with your age. It'll help you become aware of where your parents are and what those needs are. And if they are one state from another, because that's initially where my dad was, he was several states away. That added more stress. And so you relied on people that were in that state or close to you to kind of help out. But again, the awareness coupled with the things that Betty said are definitely some ways to acknowledge it.
And I'm glad that you brought up a buffer, because it's like EMDR where you go back to the previous memory. But I also remember my grandfather, he had dementia when he passed away. But what I also remember was when he was in his right mind, he visited these places so that everybody knew exactly. Yeah, he did. So we knew exactly where he wanted to go. And it was all written out, when my mind is gone, this is where I want to be. And he was a veteran, so it was run by the VA and all of that. And at the time, in his mind and everybody else's mind, he did and would have the money to afford that. But by the time he actually needed the care, the price had gone way up. And it took his retirement check,
everything,
Social Security check, all of that, and then other family members had to pitch in as well. But we tried our best to give him what he said he wanted.
Yeah, let me tell you, I agree with you two said about. I don't even know how you prepare for it. As you think about your parents as kids and growing up, teenagers, even college age, there are parents and they're always there. They've always taken care of us, even as adults, with certain limitations, And so when I notice certain weird things, with my dad, it was a surprise, like he would get lost, there would be dents in the car and we wouldn't know where they came from. And then his mind, early onset of Alzheimer's. And so having a conversation and he would ask the same question 4 times in 10 minutes. Sounds like you guys are used to that. And just looking over at him, and becoming a little annoyed, you just asked me that 5 minutes ago, and realizing that they are aging. And that this is part of the aging process. That was a surprise for me because he's always been my dad and he's always been there. Now, it's been a while since that began, but can you tell the audience about once you realize something's not right, or you can't leave them at home, or you call in their house more than twice a day just to check on them. Can you tell the audience what's that like? Like what type of emotional impact do you believe that takes people experience?
I'll start. For me, it's stressful. I recall one night prior, probably about 3 months ago, I had been calling my mom and I couldn't get her, but I was in Gwinnett, and I came home. I kind of forgot, and then I got home and it was about 10 o'clock, and I called and I still couldn't get her. So I took a shower and I'm thinking I can't get her. So I looked at my husband, I said, we got to go. And she lived in a different city she lives in a different city. And he looked at me, he's like, what's wrong? I said, she hadn't answered her phone all day.
You're panicking.
So I'm panicking. Right. And he's trying to maintain this calm composure, but I'm panicking because it's like, and then I called my sisters and I was like, hey, y'all talk to mom? And it was like, no, we haven't talked to her. They called, didn't get her. So I'm in my car, I'm headed there. I'm telling myself just that saying of pray for the best, but prepare for the worst. And I get there. I have a key. I can't get in because she's put the additional lock support that you put up against the door. So that's there. So now I'm really freaking out. I'm at her bedroom window and I'm knocking on the window. And I finally hear her. And I say, it's me, can you open the door? Are you okay? And she said, yeah, give me a minute. She's very faint, and I'm thinking, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So she gets to the door and I said, I've been calling you all day. I called my siblings' name. They had called you. Nobody could get you. And she said, I can't find the phones. And I said, what do you mean you can't find the phones? I said, you have two, and she says, I can't find them. So at this point now, I've gone from being panicked about something being really wrong with her or the worst to now I'm tearing the house up to find the phone and making sure that her cell phone is charged, just doing all these preventive measures or so I thought, which then I went out and bought more phones. I bought phones that you actually plug in that's stable that you can't move because she had these cordless phones. Yeah. But it's hard. It's scary most times. I'm talking like deep scary when you can't get them and you know that they're supposed to be in this place.
Yep.
Or if they go somewhere and you know that for my mom, she's had surgery on both of her hips, on her ankles, so her mobility and it's really challenging to be at peace and to rest when you're having parents that have some of these challenges. And it's almost like you're in fight and flight most days.
Yeah, I agree. Betty, what about you?
I can actually agree with a lot of that. My mom was in Washington when we had to move her. So we had to literally move her across the country. And she was getting lost on the city buses. So in Seattle, it's pretty busy. Tacoma, Seattle area, it's very busy. And buses can take you all over. You could start in Seattle and end up in Vancouver on a bus. And then not sure how you're going to get back. So it was just her getting lost on the buses that let us know that something was really wrong and that she'd lost a lot of weight. So she went from a healthy 120 to like 85 pounds when we went to go pick her up. So I was like, oh my goodness, so it made kind of the same thing like Tanya was saying. You get like, you're really upset and scared and frightened. But when you get there, then you're almost a little frustrated. Like, why didn't you tell me before? I've been, wanting you to move sooner. But they want their independence, Then we, as them being our parents, we want to honor that space for them as being the parent. So it was a little bit of that fight or flight. I mean, she actually set fire in my kitchen her first week here. So.
Yeah. Well, that's when my grandfather finally went to that nursing home. He set fire to the kitchen. He burned his whole house down.
Oh,
he burned down the whole house.
Oh.
And we were like, oh, now it's time.
And I have a very close friend whose father who is, in that space. And he actually got a hold of the keys one night about 2 a.m. in the morning and was going to the store. They happened to hear the car start up, but he was on his way and there was no way that he would have successfully made it to wherever he thought he was. He was going. And so that created another challenge with having to have someone to sleep closer to where he was to kind of prevent that. And that was in the early stages of what he was, beginning to experience. So it shows up in a variety of ways when they're on that decline. And as it increases, your level of security and stability decreases.
Well, one thing I heard both of you say was something about their independence. And, people want their independence. They want their space. I know for me, I like my space. So I can't imagine having to move into someone else's space. But what I've heard a lot is it's also difficult to manage being their child and them kind of being in that childlike role. How do you approach that when you're having to tell your parent to stop doing something, and they're telling you they're the parent? I mean, I'm just thinking about even my mom. I can't tell her what to do or anything.
Not yet.
And right, but even like I remember her. It was like maybe last Thanksgiving. She was down on her knees getting some pots, and stuff. And then she needed help getting up. So we helped her get up. And then later on, I turned around, look, but she's back down there. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I just got you up off the floor. Why would you do that again? And she got on me. You don't talk to me like that. I'm your mama. But these decisions you're making, like it worries me, and I'm not in the space where I can present that information in a nice way. So why don't you all help us understand, how do you approach that verbally with a parent who has dementia? Betty, let's start with you this time.
I'll be honest, initially, I did a lot of that mother henning when she first moved in, and I got a lot of the sideways eyes. I don't know who you're talking to. And then she'd walk up like, off your mind. Or she'd give me the cut eye, like, I know you did not just say that to me. I was like, well, I kind of did. And it took actually like talking with her doctor who specializes in folks with dementia and Alzheimer's, and talking to somebody from the Alzheimer's Association to find the happy balance of giving guidance and correction without being punitive, and without making her feel like she's the child and the roles have been reversed somehow. So it took a little bit of that, learning process, because they make, like you were saying, Dr. Dickerson, what are you doing on the floor again? I just got you up. They make those decisions. Like, what are you doing across the street? How did you walk over there to begin with? So learning how to combine those, that soft correction with some loving care, but not sounding, punitive, was really helpful. And trying to pair it with a little bit of humor. And I try to mix some of, like, I'd bring up a time when I had done something that was really silly, and remember when you, and mixing that with that correction, she would kind of pause and go, oh yeah, so that kind of helped too. So
thank you.
Yeah, ditto to all of that. And I, when I think about interacting with my mom, because she'll look at me and she'll say, all right now,
And you know what that means.
I know exactly what that means. And so that means I've crossed a boundary. I let you get along, as long as I can. So, all right now. And so I always go back to something that I did when I was in the school system, and that is discipline with dignity. So I work with my mom and any older adult, because I grew up around my great grandparents. I actually had that opportunity to experience them. So I learned about how to interact with older people at a younger age. And so I still carry that with me, and that is to give her options, but only options that are going to work. Right. So I don't not give her a choice. I'll give her a choice, but it's going to be between one or two things that will still get us to where we need to be. Mm-hmm. So I do things like that. And the other thing is, I let her tell me what it is. I'll ask her, what do you need from me? Or what are we doing this week? And she'll say, well, she'll get slick and she'll say, I don't know what you're doing, but this is what I need you to do. So that's how the humor comes in, because I know when she hears she's not setting up for that. So she'll just tell me, I don't know what we doing, but this is what I need you to do. And that's how I kind of work with her. And then I incorporate my girls. I have 4 girls, a set of twins, and 2 single daughters, and they do a lot of the footwork, and she enjoys being with them because she could be grandma. Mm-hmm. Right? Just like my dad did. He enjoyed being with them because he could be granddad, and it wasn't my voice. So I brought in other people that gave them still some agency without having to be told. And they could say, well, grandma, we're going to do this, or grandma, you want to do that kind of thing. And if it's grandma, then this, then it works a little bit better too. So we found a way to make the medicine go down. And it works.
Well, you guys are nice. And maybe it's different when you have an older male. And my dad, we've had some harsh words. My dad is old school. He's an old school cat. So he reminded me one time that he's my daddy. I'm not his daddy, and that he could still whoop me. And I said, no, you can't. No, you can't. You can't even pee. you know, he had a catheter at one point,
I
so
can hear you doing that too. You're gonna go back and forth with your dad.
I did. He cussed me out, like I'm 15.
Well, and see, that's what my dad would do. That's the difference between my dad and my mom. My dad would cuss me out.
He did more than once, and I had to return it, but that's my dad, and
Right.
it was coming from a nice, respectful place, but that's his language. So
Mhm.
I had to use that language, but it was a
Mhm.
transition taking on this role where I actually felt like his parent, and he was telling me I'm not his parent. But the reality is, Dr. Aisha, you're talking about your mom on the floor getting pots and pans out. There are other decisions that they make that can be much more harmful,
Right.
like driving around at 12 o'clock at night,
Mhm.
and confused where he is. And we have a tracker on his phone and trying to call him. And, that's scary. That's
Yeah.
when you panic. And he's in an area of town that he shouldn't be in. So that transition, you got to make a decision. Am I going to allow my parent to keep making these decisions that might cause some harm? Or am I going to take on a much more authoritative role? And
Yeah.
sometimes they don't like it at all. But as they decline, we have to make that transition. It sounds like you guys made it easy, or your parents made it easy. I got more than a side eye with that. But what kind of signs help you if you move to the stage where you actually place them in some type of care system, like a nursing home or assistant living? What kind of signs did you see that help you to make that decision, or what signs are you looking out for? Let's start with you, Tanya.
I think it varies depending on what the impairment is, what the issue is that's causing that decline. With my dad, like I said, he had, after having those multiple negative impacts on his body, excuse me, we just really couldn't take care of him. He needed nursing staff.
Yeah.
And while even with my mom, there's someone who comes in to work with her twice a week. And then we have someone who comes in and cleans for her, as part of the things that she get through her Medicaid, Medicare. But it wasn't the same with my dad. Now, with my mom, what will push me towards that is I'm seeing this serious decline in her eating where she's losing the weight.
Yeah.
Because I'm still working full time, as well as my other siblings. And if we're seeing to where we're having more instances where we aren't able to keep up with her and people are having to bring her home, or we're getting calls from the police or from neighbors. So things like that mental decline as well as physical decline. Right now, she can still move around. She can still cook for herself. She can't stand very long with the surgeries that she's had with her hip and her ankle, but the impact of her ability to care for herself is what's going to be a clear sign to us that we're going to have to move her there. And, I know she's not listening to this, but we've already, checked out some centers. And
That's what you think. She's gonna confront you.
Somebody's gonna say, I saw your baby on, but we've already checked some centers out, and I've already put her name on a couple lists. So,
Okay.
Because I'm noticing some things that are happening that I just mentioned to you, the decline in her ability to care for herself.
Betty.
So we had looked into some places, but chose to not take that option. Because of my mom having dementia, she qualified for hospice. So with her qualifying for hospice, and she was on hospice for like 2 years, they actually send nurses out to the house. And we had an amazing nurse that would pick her up, she'd take her out to eat. My mom unfortunately would give her the side eye and be mean and nasty at lunch, and she would be like, "It's okay." And I'm like, "I'm so thankful for you."
It's a special nurse.
That's a special nurse, I'm telling you, because my mom would, she would say all sorts of stuff, but she would come and spend time with her, and then we have other nurses that came and helped and showered, and her Medicaid and Medicare took care of that, which was nice. So we didn't have to put her somewhere else, just because I noticed with her being away from us the couple of times that she had, because we as caregivers needed the break, right? Because we still had high schoolers at home, so we just needed some time to breathe. So we would let her go to like a nursing home or a assisted living for like the weekend or a couple of days, and she got very disoriented and very aggravated, very agitated. and would get verbally assaultive. Like she would say a lot of stuff that she normally would not say. So we just realized at that point that while we need that break and it's okay for those couple of days, her living there would probably not be a great idea. So she actually stayed with us until her passing, actually. So
Okay. It's funny that Tanya, you brought up food that your mom continues to cook for herself. I'm thinking about my great grandmother. While we're talking about signs, one of the first things we noticed was, I want to say it was a Thanksgiving, she made dressing, and it had so much sage in it that everybody sat there and we ate it and we were looking around like, uh-oh, this is bad. If we throw it away, she's gonna say something.
Uncharacteristic.
Right, exactly. And on the flip side, I have a friend whose mother made potato salad, and she said they ate the potato salad, and she said there was nothing in there but potatoes and mayonnaise. Like she forgot all right, soft potatoes. She forgot all of the other ingredients and all of the seasons. They were like, oh, wow, something's happening. And other than that, they saw no signs. But Betty, you brought up needing a break and having to do something for yourself to take care of yourself. So I wanna move into that. What is it that the caretakers need in order to be healthy mentally and maybe physically? What do they need?
Just tell us.
Harrison needs to know now.
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
So the way we kind of looked at it is having mom here was like having all the kids back home. And when when our kids were young, because we've got a family of 5, when we have small children, you've got to figure out ways to have quiet time after they go to bed, right? Because when you have that many, you can't just send them off to the babysitter. So then you can't afford to go out.
Right.
But as they get older, you have more space. So that just making sure that you have like a babysitter, some time to get away. And then making sure to do something that refills your tank so that when you come home, you don't feel stressed. And we would know it was time when we'd start getting snippy with each other or real curt. Like if I started getting real curt with my husband, he's like, where's the calendar? When do we go away again? Like, it's time. But just, so being aware of yourself so you can tell it's time to get a break, and then making sure that you identify like what is it that's the most filling, in the short amount of time, if you can't be gone for a really long time when you send your loved one away.
I think that is great that you have, or you especially had a partner to help you not just take care of your mother. I know that's probably a difficult position to be in as the one who's not the child unless you just have a really close relationship with their in-laws. But you also have had someone there who could help you identify when you're burned out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What about you, Tanya?
So I have to talk about both things that you're able to do and some things people can do. I walk often. That helps me. But the way that I know it's time for me to walk is like Betty said, you start getting short with people and you're irritable. And then when I realize that I'm waking up more tired than I did before I went to bed. That's the number one sign, because it means that my mind is not shutting down. I'm constantly thinking or maybe even worried about what could happen. It takes me about 20 minutes to get to my mom. And even before my dad died, it would take me a little longer. My uncle was his primary caregiver, and I'm so and forever grateful for that. But just for me, it's about getting out, walking, listening to music. I'll have a playlist on my phone, and I'll say, Siri, hit my Friday mood. And it could be Monday morning, but that's what, kind of gets me back into it, hearing that music. And then other things too is getting with people that make me laugh and that I can just kind of talk. So that socialization, because when you're constantly working with aging parents, it's draining. It takes a lot out of you. And by the time you get home, like Betty said in one of her narratives, the things that she shared, it's kind of like, I'm done, but you have to kind of fill your cup back up. You have to get around some people that genuinely care about you, whether it's your spouse or a group of girlfriends or just, couples or what have you, so that you can feel like you and not like the caregiver of your parents. And you can even in that moment feel like, my mom, I can talk about mom in that space as her daughter, but not to talk about how I care for my mom. That kind of thing. So for me, it's about socializing. It's about having my music. It's about getting out. It's getting colder. And so what I'll do is take advantage of in my building. I'll walk in my building, but I have to walk. That really helps me in listening to music.
So it sounds. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Harrison.
So it sounds like you two created a wonderful self-care strategy for yourself, and it includes some boundaries that you set up and recognizing, when you're reaching your limit, with that. So I was going to close it out, but Aisha, did you want to ask a question?
Just one more, because I know that having children is easy usually. It's kind of to find a babysitter sometimes. People don't mind keeping kids. But my question is, where can people find resources if they need a nurse, if they need just a little respite, they want to drop their parents off for the night?
So they do have adult daycares.
They sure do.
Okay.
They have adult daycares. And even, I want to say this tongue in cheek, but I also know that some of the CNA staff that, with certain permission, they'll adjust their hours to kind of support that, is paid through the Medicare process. I don't want to say that too loudly because I don't want to get anybody in trouble.
That was enough information.
You need the right person,
You're
blessed with the right
who
person
can work with you.
You can't go and stay out till 12 o'clock at night, obviously, but and I know for me, like I said, my 4 girls, we tag team my mom, and it works well. Like if for groceries, I pay, but the twins call her and get the list. My oldest daughter orders, and my middle daughter pick it up and take it to her. I mean,
that's great. What
So
do
they're
you know about
babysitters
bed? Yeah, babysitters too.
So it's just me. So I didn't have any siblings to partner with, unfortunately, but we did partner with the American Alzheimer's Association, the Senior Citizens Council in our area, and other senior citizen groups that could do the same thing, that helps connect with, I think they're called grandparents who sit in. So they're just other seniors that'll come sit with your senior.
Yeah.
And partnering also with the nurse that we had from hospice, kind of the same thing that Tanya was talking about. Can we move those hours around? We're going to go out for the night. And she connected us to respite facilities that are like homes, like actual homes where people bring seniors into their home. And they get to enjoy a family, weekend or whatever, where they're not in a center per se, but they're in that nice family setting, which was really good. So you have the opportunity to go out and meet them, spend some time with them, get to know them before you send your loved one there. And that was real helpful. We met those facilities, those homes through our nurse that worked with the hospice group. So it was nice getting those connections.
Thank you so much for sharing that with me. Again, always thinking about being proactive. At a minimum right now, I just make sure my mom has an Apple Watch. So when she can't find her phone, she could ping her phone.
Good idea.
She can answer from her watch. If something happens, she calls, her heart starts skipping beats, the watch will send an alert. You know what? They better put me in a commercial.
You are smart. You are smart. And so these are some great strategies and resources. I can add the VA. If your parent was in the military, my dad was in the Navy, or the spouse of someone who's a veteran, there are some benefits that you can get through the VA. There's a lot of things going at the VA. You may have to wait a long time, but they do offer a lot of nice resources, especially when it's time to consider assisted living. Because some of those benefits can kick in to help that buffer that you guys were talking about. So wonderful, guys, coming on here and talking about your journey, taking care of aging parents, some strategies, taking care of yourself. Are there any final words that you want to offer the audience? Start with you, Tanya.
I want to say, this is November, which is National Family Caregivers Month. And
I didn't know that.
yeah. And so for all of the family caregivers, I salute you. It is hard work. It is necessary work. As a family caregiver, the village is necessary for you to be able to show up every day. So just think about, those moments that you had that created laughter, because the winters are coming, and that's what's going to keep you warm.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Betty, any final words or suggestions?
Well, I definitely ditto for what Tanya just said about the national caregivers. I didn't know that, so that's pretty awesome. I think the one thing that I took away from caring for my mom that was really important is taking the memories. So like writing down the important moments, maybe taking videos of when they're having a good day, because when they do pass, those are great things to reflect on. Kind of like Tanya said, enjoy those memories, the laughter, because winter is coming. They'll pass someday. So having those, I have lots of pictures that pop up on my phone periodically, and they're like, from this day and 2 years ago or whatever, it just pops up. And it's a great picture of my mom. She's laughing, or we're, doing something funny, or we're using Snapchat filters. So just remembering to, find space for those moments, because they're kind of fleeting in this time as they age.
Thank you. And thank you both for not just sharing your expertise, but sharing your personal stories about being caregivers. I think there's a lot of value in that, and we appreciate you.
Absolutely. So thank you guys for coming on board, sharing things with us. This is the end of today's episode. I want to thank you guys for watching Two Therapists and a Microphone. I am Dr. Harrison Davis.
And I'm Dr. Aisha Dickerson.
Tune in next week on Thursday at 8:00 p.m. and 7:00 p.m.
No, not next week. It's going to be Thanksgiving. So
that's right. We're going to skip
Tune
a
in
week
in 2 weeks
because we got to do self-care. But I want to thank our guests, Betty Johnson and Tanya Simmons-Lee, and we will see you guys in 2 weeks.
like this.